When U.S. men's soccer coach Jurgen Klinsmann went into the World Cup saying his team couldn't win, it prompted howls of protest. But Klinsmann was just acknowledging a simple fact. When it comes to soccer, the United States can't compete against top teams like Brazil and Germany. But now there's a push to change the way America's best young players learn the game. And that could help turn the U.S. into an international powerhouse after years of mediocrity. WGBH News' Adam Riley has this focus report.
Dempsey, great start here. Clint Dempsey scoring!
When the U.S. beat Ghana in its first World Cup game, the best and worst of American soccer was on display, from Clint Dempsey's toughness to long stretches where the team looked lost. It was a quintessential result for the U.S. team, respectable but not commanding. But now there's a systematic effort to change that, and it's happening in places like Foxborough.
I want movement in there on the balls. Come on, Dylan, be clean with the ball. Yeah.
This is the New England Revolution Academy, a program that's part soccer finishing school and part minor league team. The goal is simple: find the best local players at an early age and push them hard.
The kids don't pay a dime to come here. It's fully funded. We've got these facilities, we've got full-time staff. We feel that we can go out and find the very best players, work with them, develop them, give them time, and allow them to flourish.
Brian Scales is the Revolution's Director of Youth Development. He says this academy and those run by other teams in Major League Soccer represent a major shift in the way Americans approach the game.
There's no doubt that the recipe and the formula for developing the best soccer players around the world is getting kids at a young age, having an age-appropriate curriculum that will allow them to develop cognitively, socially, physically, athletically.
The Revs Academy already has some high-profile successes. Diego Fagundes and Scott Caldwell came through the academy and now play for the Revolution. It's a path Academy striker Amadou Kounate hopes to follow.
I like to score goals, but I also like to do it with a little bit of flair and have fun doing it.
Originally from Sierra Leone, Kounate moved to the U.S. when he was 8. A few years ago, when he was playing for a local youth team, the Revolution scouts ID'd him as a major talent.
And you come in, and it's really cool because you get in and you sign a paper, you sign like a letter as like you're joining the professional club. So that was really exciting for me.
Kounate is heading to Harvard and hopes to play professionally. He says thanks to the intensive training he and his teammates get in Foxborough, the prospect of taking on the best international players isn't intimidating at all.
If we were to be invited to a European tournament right now, we'd be excited. And we would go thinking that we want to win. We're not going already condemned, thinking that, oh, we're Americans, that we're just going to go have fun. No, we think we're good enough.
The current U.S. team could use a bit of that swagger. And if the Revs Academy does its job, it may just be a matter of time.
We will develop a world-class player at some point. It's whether it's 5, 10, 15 years down the road.
Which could finally transform U.S. soccer from an also-ran into a force. This story got me thinking about my own deeply undistinguished soccer career. In high school, I played on the soccer team. I had trouble running and kicking the ball at the same time. I wasn't very good. But there were a couple guys who I played with who were fantastic. One guy played on the World Cup team. Another guy played on the Olympic team. And this really makes me wonder if they had had this sort of system in place when they were, 15 or 16 years old, how much better would they have been if they spent time with people like them as opposed to scrubs like me?
Like down at the Revs thing. Well, what do those kids give up? Do they have to,
In most of their cases, not in the case of Amadou, for whom they made an exception, but for most of them, they cannot play in school anymore. So they're not playing for their high school team. They're also making a great big time commitment. I think they come from as far away as Connecticut. So, you're looking at a 3-hour commute in some cases each way to train. Now, down the road, they may end up creating a residential system where people are actually going to school down there, not in high school at all, living with these people, studying and playing with them. And then they're giving up, the whole high school experience, this very fundamental American thing.
Yeah. Oh, great. All right, Adam, thanks for that. All right, well, my next guest is a former pro soccer player. Doug Warren is a goalkeeper who played for the New England Revolution from 2004 to 2008. So you were a high school All-American. What is the difference between the training you got then versus the kind of stuff that goes on now?
Well, right now, this foundation that they've started to implement is it's a positive for American soccer, because when I was growing up and and going through the high school system, while we had a very competitive high school system, we weren't playing with the best players day in and day out and being really pushed to be the best player you could be, because we weren't surrounded by each individual player that was very good. So recognizing these players at an early age, as the Revolution is doing with their academy system, and picking out those top players and putting them in a competitive environment is only going to make soccer better in America.
It's kind of cute that the young man that Adam interviewed said he feels fearless when he plays international players. That probably wasn't the case a while back from the American point of view.
Yeah, and I think that goes back again to that structure and being in that competitive environment day in and day out. As Americans, we always feel that we can and should win, and it's great to hear that coming from his voice, and that excitement and that will to win. And yeah, I think that if we can replicate that throughout the country, there's no reason why we can't be a top contender for the World Cup in years to come.
All right, I want to bring Brian O Donovan into the discussion. As you may know him, of course, as the host of A Celtic Sojourn on WGBH Radio, but he previously served as Chief Operating Officer of the New England Revolution. When you were running it, Brian, I mean, I can remember when it got started, and there was a bit of cynicism in town, let's face it. I don't think anybody thought it was going to last.
We were the underdogs, definitely. We were very much a distant fifth with the 5 established sports, and that's kind of how we approached it in actual fact. We kind of became the underdog, and we sold that as we wanted that kind of support and that kind of rah-rah behind us, and we actually got it in the early years. But I think it's very important, Emily, that founding of Major League Soccer back in 1996 and its launch, I always said back then the most important thing for American soccer was to have that league exist, because it created the circumstances in which serendipitously players could come in and capture the imagination of the American public, which is so now in demand. I mean, the attention of our attention is so in demand. There's so much sports out there, you know, the established sports and the X Games and golf and everything else competing for our attention. But now that the league continues and seems to have stabilized very much so, this is the longest a pro league has ever existed in the US, I think it presents a platform where lightning in a bottle might happen. And that's, you know, something like Magic Johnson and Larry Bird when they came into the NBA. Well,
when you think about it, more kids, boys and girls, play soccer in school than any other sport, including baseball, football.
Absolutely.
I mean, and yet it hasn't caught on as this kind of international sensation the way it has in other countries. Why not?
Well, there's a whole variety of reasons for that. I think, again, the competition. A lot of kids are very good athletes. I bet you're a good athlete across the board. I bet he could play other sports. He just happened to choose soccer and become a pro player. But a lot of these kids are lured away by the attraction of football, of baseball, of the higher echelon sports, the higher impact sports, and certainly the higher paying sports that are out there. I think that's beginning to change gradually, and a win, a series of wins in the World Cup can change kids' imagination and lead them in that path, and I hope that happens.
Doug, what kind of money can a professional soccer player make these days?
Yeah, I think that Brian hit it on the head there.
Millions?
Yeah,
baseball?
Millions now. I mean, I think that if you look back at the Clint Dempseys and the Landon Donovans of today, we didn't have that back when I was coming up. So being able to see that as a youth player and having that kind of that finish line or that target to hit is a big driving force in our development as a youth. Being able to see Clint come back from a successful stint in Europe and then now being a driving force for MLS and being financially rewarded for his successes is something it's really going to be a driver for our youth development.
All right, let's hope the U.S. team gets a few more, and maybe this will be the #1 sport.
It could be huge. And when it starts attracting players from the inner city is when it's going to turn a corner as well.
Yeah.
All right, Brian O Donovan, Doug Warren, thanks so much.
Thank you.